Hello and welcome to the Consistory of the Coelc YouTube channel. I'm your host for this video, Reverend Jake Zabel of the St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church located in Dalby, Queensland, Australia. A member congregation of the Confessional Orthodox Evangelical Lutheran Communion. Now, on today's video, I wanted to discuss the welcome to country that we have here in Australia. So the welcome to country, for those who don't know, mainly for like American viewers, it's essentially a land acknowledgement for the traditional Aboriginal or Indigenous owners of that particular land or territory within the nation of Australia. Now, the question is, should or shouldn't a Christian participate in the welcome to country? Particularly churches like the Lutheran Church of Australia will actually do the welcome to country or this land acknowledgement at the start of their opening services or their valedictory service or even their ordination service. And the question is, should we do this as Christians? Now, there are many political reasons either for or against doing this, but I'm not going to discuss those in this video because this is a theological channel and I want to talk about theological reasons and not political reasons. Especially since politics should not divide the church. You should be able to have a political opinion without that necessarily dividing the church, as long as it is a purely political opinion and not a moral opinion. For example, issues of like abortion aren't just political issues, they are also questions of morals, and so that is something different. But when it comes to the welcome to country, this is somewhat of a purely political issue. And so should we do it or shouldn't we do it? Now, I can think it's bad practice to do it particularly for things like ordination services, because we shouldn't really be bringing politics into the church since the ordination service is actually a divine service. Now, for the seminary's kind of graduation ceremony, because that's done as like a university kind of ceremony and it's not like a church service, then I don't think there would be necessarily a problem with having the welcome to country or land acknowledgement if you want to do that during that kind of a, secular university style ceremony. Then it's okay to have political things brought in. I don't think it's right to be bringing politics into church services like the ordination service. Particularly, like as I said, we shouldn't have politics dividing the church. If individual members support the welcome to country, then that's for them to do and for them to do in their own time. But when you do something in church, what if you have members who don't politically support the welcome to country? You are now forcing your politics on them. And so that's actually making a political issue within the church. So personally, I don't think we should be doing it as part of church services or things like that. If they're a completely secular service, and by secular I mean not a divine service, so not a service of word and sacrament, but like just a university style graduation ceremony, then you can introduce politics there. But then again, is it right for the church to be introducing politics into church related things? That is also a problematic thing because it can raise issues, and whether it may not be problematic itself to say the welcome to country, there might be a burdening of consciences for certain people, and there may be creating offense to people, and we in the church shouldn't be going out of our way to cause offense. So we should keep political things out of the church and out of ceremonies related to the church. Now, that is just a matter of kind of not creating offense. However, there is one theological thing that I do want to specify with the welcome to country, and that is that the welcome of country mostly begins with, we acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the such and such people, etc. However, the proper welcome to country goes on to say we acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, or past, present, and future. And the problem with that is that the Aboriginal, indigenous kind of pagan worship does have ancestral worship, and if you acknowledge the elders past, you are actually participating in the indigenous ancestral worship of the Australian Aboriginals, and as Christians we should not do that. Now, I have noticed that in a lot of settings in the Lutheran Church of Australia, when they do the welcome of country, they normally just do the acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement of the traditional custodians of the land, the traditional Aboriginal people who lived there before the European settlers. Often the LCA cuts the welcome to country short and doesn't do the acknowledgement of the elders, past, present, and emerging. Now that is a good thing to do. If you're going to have this welcome to country, we shouldn't participate in the pagan worship and the ancestral worship of the Australian Aboriginals. So if you are going to do the welcome to country, you should cut out that line. Now the question would be, since the welcome to country does ordinarily include that line, should we say it at all? Because wouldn't that be consenting to that line even if we don't explicitly say it? Not necessarily. Like, you can... It'd be like if I wrote a hymn, or let's ignore me writing hymn. Let's say like a Calvinist wrote a hymn and there's a very problematic line in that hymn. Can you sing the rest of the hymn and just skip that one line? Theoretically, yes. Now, is it appropriate to then sing the rest of that hymn knowing that that one line existed? That's really a matter of conscience, and that's a personal issue. And there might be some brothers in the faith and some sisters in the faith that aren't comfortable with doing, like, singing that hymn at all because they know that that hymn contains that line, even though they're not singing that particular line. And so again, even though he may not be saying that problematic, that theologically problematic line, there might be some people who have an issue with saying any of the welcome to country because they know that the original version of the welcome to country does contain that theologically problematic line. And that just brings me back to this point again, that we need to be careful not to create offense in the church. And so when it comes to these matters of the church, we shouldn't be doing political things in the church. Now, for example, the national anthem in Australia, there are some people who have problems with that. We have recently changed our national anthem from Young and Free to One and Free because there were certain people that took issue with the phrase Young and Free, particularly the Indigenous community, because they felt like it was dismissing that they have been here for a long time before European settlers. And so there were people that took issue with this, the lines in the national anthem. And it's not appropriate for the church to be singing the national anthem in church. We shouldn't be bringing politics into the church. And so we shouldn't be bringing politics into the church. And if we're not going to be bringing the national anthem into a divine service, why are we doing the welcome to country or this land acknowledgement as part of divine services? Like I said, if it's something like the seminary's university graduation ceremony, which isn't a divine service, it might be appropriate to use it there. However, this is still an kind of the work of the church, and I have been to the LCA graduation ceremonies. I went there myself to get my bachelor degree and my advanced diploma, and these ceremonies often have the invocation and the benediction and prayers and hymn singing and stuff like that. So they are essentially still a divine service, just not a service with Holy Communion. So they are in this sense still a church service. And if it's a church service, it's a work of the church, we shouldn't be bringing politics into the church. Pastors shouldn't preach about politics in their sermons, and we definitely shouldn't have political things as part of the divine service. So that's my advice on whether Christians should or shouldn't participate in the welcome to country. Look, if it's in a secular thing, if it's a personal thing, it's outside of the church, it has nothing to do with the church, that's on you. As long as I would say you kind of, as a Christian, do not speak that theologically problematic line about acknowledging elders past and present and emerging, because that does kind of condone the Indigenous ancestral worship of the Australian Aboriginals. But if you want to do the welcome to country, that is something you can do outside of the church. Do not bring politics into the church. And that is where I'm going to leave this video with that final summary. Do not bring politics into the church.